Hello everyone, my name is Anna and I'm 31 years old. Recently, I experienced the joy of becoming a mother for the first time. However, this joyful occasion was almost overshadowed by a harrowing experience with my mother-in-law, which I know sounds unbelievable, but allow me to share my story with you. My story begins with my husband, Richard. We first crossed paths in college and immediately hit it off. It felt like love at first sight. Richard and I shared a deep connection that seemed unparalleled, and I felt understood by him in a way I had never experienced before. After our college graduation, we decided to start our life together by moving in. While my relationship with Richard was everything I could have hoped for, my relationship with his mother, Grace, was the complete opposite. You see, Richard and his family moved to my state from Oklahoma when he was 13. They brought with them charming Southern accents and a culture different from my own. Initially, I excused Grace's unfavorable treatment towards me as cultural differences, but it was clear she had taken an instant dislike to me. Grace seemed to think I was taking her son away from her, and it didn't help that Richard's family adored me. I hadn't done anything special. I just made an effort to listen and remember things about them, showing that I cared, which naturally endeared me to them. This, however, only fueled Grace's animosity. Grace would often make underhanded comments aimed at undermining me, a behavior that became more covert once people began to defend me. Thankfully, Richard was always by my side, ensuring his mother's attempts at belittling me were not left unchecked. After 8 wonderful years together, Richard and I decided to get married in a small, intimate ceremony that remains the happiest day of my life. Despite Grace's attempts to cause trouble, we managed to keep her in line with a firm warning. Following our marriage, my relationship with Richard's extended family only grew stronger, much to Grace's dismay. It reached a point where Richard's relatives preferred staying with us over a hotel when they visited, further isolating Grace due to her unkind behavior, not just towards me, but towards others as well. This story highlights not just the trials I faced, but the strength found in unity and love within a family, even in the face of adversity. But Grace's animosity wasn't just aimed at me, it extended to her family members, leading them to prefer our company over hers. Putting those challenges aside, 4 years into our marriage, I started experiencing odd abdominal pains. Initially, I didn't think much of it, attributing the discomfort to random issues, but a gut feeling convinced me to seek medical advice. To my astonishment, the diagnosis was that I was 5 months pregnant. This news was completely unexpected, especially since I hadn't noticed any significant changes in my body. Any weight gain, I assumed, was due to holiday indulgences. Filled with excitement, I planned a special dinner to share the news with Richard upon his return home. I prepared his favorite dishes and opened a bottle of fine wine, setting the stage for our memorable moment. "Welcome home, sweetie. What's with the grand setup?" Richard was puzzled but intrigued. "I have something wonderful to share. But first, sit down and let's enjoy this moment," I said, trying to contain my excitement. Richard, now curious, asked, "Should I be worried?" "Not at all. I think you'll be thrilled," I assured him, eager to see his reaction. "So, you know the strange pains I've been having? I saw a doctor today and it turns out they're not what we thought." Richard looked concerned. "What's going on?" "I'm pregnant! We're 5 months along already!" I exclaimed, barely containing my joy. Richard's face lit up with happiness and disbelief. "How is that even possible?" I explained, "Apparently it's a hidden pregnancy. I've had no symptoms apart from those pains, which were baby kicks." Richard hugged me, overwhelmed with joy. "This is incredible news, and what perfect timing too, now that we're in a good place financially. I've been wanting to talk about starting a family." As our joy bubbled over, a shadow of concern crept in regarding Grace's reaction to our happiness. I'm worried about how your mom will react given her feelings towards me, I admitted. Richard reassured me, "Don't worry, I'll talk with her. Your only job is to enjoy this time and feel like the queen you are." Despite the complexity surrounding us, this moment was ours, a beacon of joy amidst the trials, promising a new chapter filled with love and unity. Richard and I agreed that waiting to discover our baby's gender before throwing a celebration was a lovely idea. In the meantime, we indulged in our little celebration, feeling ecstatic about the pregnancy. We hadn't planned everything out yet, but we were financially prepared for when the time came to start a family. A month later, we shared our joyful news with our families. My family was thrilled, and so were most of Richard's family members except for Grace. Her reaction was minimal, save for a noticeable scowl directed our way. Despite her response, we planned a gender reveal party to share the excitement with our loved ones. We decided on a backyard barbecue and revealed the baby's gender through the classic cake-cutting method. Discovering we were having a boy brought me immense happiness, and I eagerly anticipated setting up the nursery. During the party, I reveled in the attention and care of everyone, answering questions and feeling like the center of the universe. However, I noticed Grace's absence. Upon inquiring, I learned she was inside the house. Concerned, I went to find her and eventually spotted her at the top of the stairs. Approaching her, I asked, "Grace, what are you doing up here? Everyone's celebrating downstairs." "I'm searching for evidence," she replied, her tone cold. "Evidence of what?" I was confused. "Of your deception," Grace accused, implying doubt about my pregnancy. Shocked, I responded, "What do you mean? Why would you think my pregnancy isn't real?" "You're too small for 7 months. There's no way you're pregnant," she retorted, her skepticism clear. I tried to reason with her. "Every pregnancy is different, Grace. Just because I'm not showing as much doesn't mean I'm not expecting." But she continued to accuse me, "You're just craving attention." Why would I invent a pregnancy for attention? What reason would I have to want that? I questioned, genuinely perplexed by her accusation. Grace then revealed her deep-seated jealousy. "I know your type. You're envious that my son devotes all his attention to you." Her words highlighted the extent of her misunderstanding and the depth of her unfounded resentment. It was clear that our differences were about more than just cultural misunderstandings or personal grievances. They were rooted in her insecurities and fears of being replaced in her son's life. During a tense confrontation with Grace, I tried to reason with her. "Grace, it feels like you're transferring your insecurities onto me, and I can't help but feel upset by that. The attention you're accusing me of seeking? I'm not after that. It seems you're the one feeling robbed, but causing stress like this isn't good for anyone, least of all my baby. I'm going to leave now. Your hostility isn't worth the spotlight you claim I'm stealing." But her bitterness was unyielding. "Nobody cares about you. What are you trying to prove?" The last thing I recall was the sharp shove, the tumble down the stairs, and the overwhelming agony that enveloped me before darkness took over. Waking up in the hospital was disorienting. Tubes were attached to me and pain radiated from my abdomen. Beside me, Richard, whom I affectionately call Mark, was a sight for sore eyes, though he was caught in an uneasy slumber. My cough startled him awake, his expression a mix of shock and relief. "You're awake, thank God," he murmured, struggling to maintain composure. Confused, I inquired about the events leading to my hospitalization. "What happened?" "I don't remember slipping." Richard hesitated, then said, "You fell down some stairs, but Anna, there's something you need to hear, and I need you to stay calm." Panic about the baby set in. "Please, not my baby, tell me they're okay." He gently tried to calm me. "You lost a lot of blood. The doctors struggled to find a donor. And about the baby. They had to induce labor due to your condition." "How's the baby?" I pressed, anxiety mounting. "They're doing everything to stabilize our child. "He's in the NICU, in the best hands," Richard assured me, trying to comfort me amidst the uncertainty. A mixture of relief and concern washed over me. Richard's assurance that I shouldn't blame myself was met with my resolve. "It's not myself I blame," I whispered, a cold realization settling in. Concerned, Richard asked, "What do you mean?" "I need you to bring your mother here. She needs to know what happened, all of it. I'll explain more later." Hesitant but understanding, Richard agreed. He then went to speak with the doctor, who had good news. A donor was found and the transfusion could proceed immediately. The weight of the situation, coupled with the physical exhaustion, lulled me back to sleep after the transfusion, leaving unresolved matters for another day. My emotions were a whirlwind, tangled with gratitude, anger, and concern. I was thankful that our son was alive, yet the thought that he might face challenges due to Grace's actions ignited a fierce anger within me. It wasn't the potential difficulties in his development that troubled me. It was the fact that they might stem from such a senseless act. After resting for a few hours, I awoke feeling significantly better. Richard was by my side as ever, ready to comfort and update me on our situation. "How are you feeling now?" he asked, seeing that I had stirred. "Much better, thankfully. How's our little boy?" My first thoughts were of our son. "He's stable now, but will need to stay in the NICU for a couple of months. You can't hold him just yet, but we'll be able to see him. He's adorable," Richard assured me, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and joy. "That's a relief to hear, but didn't you mention wanting to see your mom?" I remembered the unresolved issue that needed addressing. "Yes, she's here. Should I bring her in?" Richard asked, hesitant but willing. I nodded, preparing myself for the confrontation. Grace entered, feigning ignorance and concern. "Hi, Anna. How are you?" Richard cut to the chase, detailing the events leading up to our son's premature birth and the emergency that followed. Grace acted surprised and congratulatory, avoiding the heart of the matter. "Grace, there's something we need to discuss," I stated, unwilling to let her evasion stand. Richard, confused, relayed how Grace had found us after the fall, expressing his gratitude for her presence. But it was time for the truth. "Grace, it's time you explained yourself," I prompted, my patience waning. "What is she talking about, Mom?" Richard looked between us, seeking clarity. Grace attempted to dismiss my accusations as postpartum confusion, but I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation. "Stop pretending it's nothing. Mark, your mother pushed me down the stairs," I revealed, the truth heavy in the air. Richard was shocked, struggling to piece together the events. "What? But you went to find Grace?" "Yes, and I found her all right. She confronted me, accusing me of faking my pregnancy for attention," I explained, the absurdity and malice of Grace's actions laid bare. The room was tense as the reality of Grace's actions began to sink in. It was a moment of reckoning, a time to face the consequences of actions driven by jealousy and denial. The priority, however, remained clear: the well-being of our son and healing from this ordeal, both physically and emotionally. Grace had accused me of taking her spotlight right before the fall. Despite her admission of jealousy, her justification fell short when faced with the gravity of her actions. Richard, incredulous, confronted his mother. "So you risked everything based on a doubt? That's unacceptable." Grace tried to defend herself, suggesting my pregnancy wasn't obvious, but Richard countered, emphasizing the potential for irreversible harm. Her apology felt hollow against the backdrop of what could have been a tragedy. At that moment, Richard made it clear she was not welcome, needing time to process the betrayal. Despite her attempts to stay, Richard was firm in his stance, his actions driven by a mix of shock and disappointment. The aftermath was a blend of anger and disbelief for me. Richard took decisive steps, ensuring Grace had no access to us or our son. He was apologetic, though I reassured him, grateful for his unwavering support. Following my discharge, the ensuing months were a whirlwind of hospital visits and family support, contrasting sharply with Grace's attempts at reconciliation, which we firmly ignored. Our focus was solely on our son's recovery and our healing. Finally, after 3 challenging months, our son was discharged from the NICU. Holding him for the first time was an overwhelming experience, filled with relief and tears, a stark reminder of what we nearly lost. News of our son's homecoming somehow reached Grace, leading her to make unsolicited attempts to contact us, even going as far as showing up at our doorstep uninvited. Thankfully, Richard was the one to handle her unexpected visit, sparing me the confrontation. Our resolve to protect our family's peace was stronger than ever, underscored by the ordeal we had endured. Had I been the one to open the door to Grace, my response might have been far less restrained, given the anguish she inflicted upon us. Grace's appearance was worn, marked by the passage of time and perhaps regret. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she implored Richard for a chance to speak, a plea for reconciliation that fell on understandably deaf ears. "Please, I need to talk," she urged, her voice a mix of desperation and sorrow. Richard, however, remained resolute. "Why do you think you have the right to see our son after everything you've done?" Grace's plea for forgiveness was met with Richard's stark reminder of the pain her actions caused, not just to us, but to our newborn son as well. "I thought I was protecting you," Grace claimed, believing her actions were justified by a misplaced rivalry with me. "How could endangering Anna and our son ever be seen as protecting me?" Richard countered, disbelief and frustration evident in his tone. Grace's attempts to justify her actions only unveiled her true motives, a deep-seated jealousy and inability to accept someone else receiving the affection and attention she craved within the family. Her claim that she acted in Richard's best interest was quickly dismantled by his defense of me and the qualities he cherished in our relationship. The confrontation escalated as Richard pointed out the stark reality. My presence had brought the family closer, highlighting Grace's inability to accept her diminishing influence. Refusing to mince words any longer, Richard laid bare the truth of Grace's actions and their impact on our lives, indicating a limit to his tolerance influenced by my pleas for family unity. Grace's defense crumbled under the weight of Richard's condemnation, her claim to innocence threatened by the possibility of evidence against her. The standoff between mother and son, fraught with years of tension and brought to a head by recent events, underscored a pivotal moment of reckoning. Grace's insistence on denial and bluff was met with Richard's unwavering support for me and our family, a testament to the bonds we've built in the face of adversity. Richard and I were seeking peace and quiet to recover and bond with our newborn. So we made it clear to Grace that we needed space that didn't include her. Her reaction, demanding the right to see her grandson despite her actions, was met with a firm denial from us. Her insistence on her so-called grandparents' rights was a battle we were ready to face. Grace's persistence didn't wane. She bombarded us with calls, texts, and uninvited visits, creating chaos at our doorstep. Our response was to obtain a restraining order against her, a decision we didn't take lightly but deemed necessary for our family's well-being. This measure was taken just in time for us to bring our son home. Holding him for the first time was an emotionally overwhelming experience, filled with gratitude and love. We decided to dedicate the following months to our son, asking for privacy, which our friends and family respected. Grace, however, refused to cease her attempts to disrupt our peace. Her actions escalated to a legal battle as she sought her grandparents' rights through the court. This move was infuriating, considering her near-fatal actions towards me and our child. With solid evidence in hand, Richard and I consulted with a reputable lawyer, prepared to counter her claims, and, if necessary, press charges for her harassment and endangerment. The courtroom drama that unfolded was intense. Grace portrayed herself as a victim of exclusion, aiming to tug at the jury's heartstrings. Despite her emotional display, we stood firm, supported by undeniable evidence of her misconduct and the risks she posed to our family's safety. This was not just about setting boundaries. It was about protecting our son from the very person who jeopardized his life before it truly began. When we presented our case in court, the atmosphere changed dramatically as we revealed the most damning evidence against Grace. Security footage showing her pushing me down the stairs. The room fell into stunned silence, and Grace's face turned ashen, revealing her shock and guilt. Following the initial court session, Grace bombarded us with angry messages, accusing us of deceit. It became clear that for our peace and safety, we had to block her completely. A few weeks later, Grace faced the consequences of her actions and was convicted of attempted harm against an unborn child, receiving a 7-month jail sentence. Her attempts to appeal the decision were unsuccessful, much to our relief. This outcome brought a sense of closure and justice for Richard and me, and unsurprisingly, it also affected her standing within the family. News of her actions and the legal outcome spread, leading to a collective decision to distance from her. Serving her sentence, Grace would find herself isolated, a direct result of her actions. Meanwhile, Richard and I were embracing our new roles as parents, enjoying the journey without the overshadowing stress Grace had caused. The peace that followed her conviction allowed us to focus on our son, cherishing every moment with him in a stress-free environment. We've even begun contemplating a move, a decision we're taking our time with, ensuring it's right for our newly expanded family. Sharing this story has been cathartic, and we appreciate the support and understanding from those who've listened.